So today's lesson is about classification. So number 1 until number 6 is all about classification. So I'll introduce you those classification again as we go along. Okay. So the species concept, we already learned the definition of species. And in the syllabus, it says that there are 3 ways for us to refer to the definition of species. 3 ways. First way is the definition that you're already very familiar with, which is a biological species concept. So we're thinking about biology. So in biology, what do you mean by species? So species is a group of organisms with similar morphological and physiological, I also teach you behavioral, okay, characteristic, which can interbreed among themselves to produce vigorous and fertile offspring. So this is biological definition. And also they are reproductively isolated from other species on Earth naturally. So this is the full definition of species in terms of biological concept. But a lot of people, when they say species, when they don't learn about biology, they only know that, okay, species means they look alike, right? Zebra, they look alike, so it's the same species. Horse, they look alike, they're the same species. So it's a group of organisms that share many physical features that distinguish them from other species. So this is what most people would think about species, a morphological concept. Okay. Then ecological species concept. So what about ecological species? Ecology have to do with the place that they live, right? So when we talk about ecological species concept, means we're talking about a population of individuals of the same species living in the same place at the same time. It's like, okay, human, as Subang Jaya population, okay, Sunway population, PJ population. So it's a group of organisms of the same species living in the same place or same area at the same time. So this is in terms of ecological species concept. Okay. So what is population? Just recap the meaning of population. It's a group of organisms of the same species present in the same place at the same time. So it's called population. Now, you have to revise again how to write the name of the species. Naming of the species is using the binomial nomenclature. Bi means 2, nomial means name. Nomenclature means system of naming. So when we name any species on Earth, we always give them 2 words. Binomial means 2, right? 2 words. So the scientific name for human is Homo sapiens. And the common name is called what? Human. So please write in your PowerPoint. So common name is human. Scientific name is the binomial nomenclature, Homo sapiens. So Homo sapiens, right? When you see those name in the articles, right? Whether it's soft copy or hard copy, is always italicized. It's italic, okay? And then the first letter of the word must be a capital letter, and the first letter of the second word must be small letter. And then if you write the Homo sapiens using your handwriting, you must underline the word Homo and the word sapiens. The spacing between these 2 words do not underline. Only underline the 2 names. Okay. So for what is why is there 2 names there? Because the first name is called the genus name. Okay, it's the grouping of this organism into the genus. So it's called genus name or generic name. And the second name is called the specific epithet or trivial name. Specific epithet means the special characteristic this person or this organism. Trivial name is how we classify them. So for example, so this whole thing is called species name. Homo sapiens is called the species name. So for example, you have learned these 2 organisms, right? Agrobacterium, tumorphitions, and Thermus aquaticus. You have learned them, isn't it? Yes, you have. You have. So genus name and specific epithet. Okay. Now, if you look at the genus name, also you can see that Agrobacterium is bacteria related to agriculture, which is in the soil, right? Tumorphitions is the characteristic of this particular genus of bacteria because it's able to induce tumor formation in the root of the plant that it infects. That's why it's called agrobacterium tumor efficiency. Thermus aquaticus also you learned before. Thermus means something hot, isn't it? Thermus. So this type of bacteria live in area that's very hot. So this group of bacteria live in area very hot. They are all classified under the genus Thermus. But Thermus also got many types because hot means it can be hot, hot spring in somewhere and high in the mountain or in the sea near the volcanic vent, isn't it? So Thermus aquaticus is this bacteria. Aquaticus means live in the sea or live in water area. Okay. So the picture actually shows the bacteria, agrobacterium tumor efficiency. It can cause tumor formation in the root of the plant. Then this long rod-shaped bacteria is the Thermus aquaticus. They can be found in the hot spring. Okay. So that's how we name the organism based on their special characteristic. So we're going to look at hierarchical classification of all the organisms on Earth. So we're going to look at the definition first. Biological classification is the arrangement of living and as well as extinct organisms into systematic groups based on similarity and differences between the species. So because there's so many organisms on Earth, we want to classify them, means we put them into a certain group based on their similarity and differences, so it is easier for us to identify and to study them and to relate them. So the purpose of classification is so that it's easier for us to understand the feature of the organism and remember the different kinds of organisms on Earth. So how many species on Earth? Hello? 100 million. 100 million species on Earth. So a lot. So taxonomy. So what is the meaning of the word taxonomy? Every time we say classifying of organism, we have to refer to taxonomy. So taxonomy is like biology. It's a study of, okay, biology study of life. Taxonomy is a study of and practicing of the naming and classifying of organism into the hierarchical classification scheme, which is the one on the right side. This is called a hierarchical classification scheme. Means you put everyone into different rank, right, from the highest to the lowest rank. Okay. So hierarchical classification is the arrangement of organisms into groups of different ranks, from the lowest one, which is species, to the highest one, which is the domain. Okay, not life. Life means all living things, right? So the highest one is domain. So lowest rank is species. Similar, so you see lowest rank is species. Then the similar type of species, when they look quite similar, we classify them and group them under genus. Similar type of genus, okay, each of these is different genus, we classify them together as a family and so on. So this is how we classify them in a hierarchical classification. Okay, so the highest rank is which one? Life or domain? Which one? Huh? Domain. Okay, please write down into your PowerPoint. Highest one is domain. So the hierarchical classification. So when we have classified them in this form, there will be a taxonomical ranking of the organism. So taxonomic rank is one of the groups used in the hierarchical classification system for organisms. So this is called a hierarchy, right? Okay. So each of this group here is a taxonomic rank. From the lowest one is the species, because the smallest number, to the highest one is the kingdom, because it includes the largest number of organisms. Okay. So this, each one of them is a taxonomic rank. Now, kingdom. Kingdom is the taxonomic rank below the domain. Now, there's no domain here, so you can add one more there. The final one at the base, you write it as domain, because domain has been introduced recently only into the hierarchical classification. So therefore, when you look at the internet, sometimes you may not find it. Okay. Now, taxon. Taxon is a singular, plural is taxa, like bacterium, bacteria, right? Mitochondrion, mitochondria, taxon, taxa. is a taxonomic group of any rank. Taxon means taxonomic group of any rank. So each of these is a taxon. Each of these is a taxon. So for example, a particular species is a taxon. A family is also a taxon. A class is also a taxon. A kingdom is also a taxon. So each of these is a taxon, means the ranking of the group in the hierarchical classification. Okay. Domain is the highest taxonomic rank, which is the drawn at the bottom there. Please draw. So this example to show the classification of the organism into the hierarchical classification. So you can see that starting from the highest domain all the way down to species. So have you had any way of memorizing them? Anyone? Adam? No? He Cheng Han? How do you memorize them? Huh? How?
My teacher told me one that very dark. Nothing will keep them.
Okay. Okay.
Kids playing chess on freeway get slaughtered.
Do you hear me? Kids, where got kids? Oh, kids playing chess on the freeway means or highway, is it? Get slaughtered. There are many ways to memorize. My uni lecturer said other thing. So kids playing chess on freeway get slaughtered. Okay. My uni lecturer teach me something else, like it's something not easy to remember also because he's more like Amor. So he said King Peter can order fried buffalo steak. So because he's a zoologist, so he likes to talk about animal. Okay, what happened? Oh, okay, I know already. Okay, so you might be asked to write down the name for the taxonomy of certain organisms when certain information is given to you. So then you need to draw a table and write down like this. Okay, so this is African bush elephant and this is hibiscus, right? Okay, you don't have to memorize them, you just have to know that this is a hierarchical arrangement. Just have to remember that. And then domain is newly introduced. That's why some of you, when you learn, right, you don't learn domain. It's actually newly introduced. After you understand why they introduced this one, afterwards. So now we're going to learn why is it that they start to introduce this highest tier, highest taxonomy. Okay. Highest taxon is called a domain. So they say that the organism on Earth can be further classified into Archaea, Bacteria, and Eukarya. Now, in the past, right, we only divide all organisms on Earth into two main groups, which you are very familiar with, which is actually the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes, because they're very different. But then they noticed that for the prokaryotes, which are the bacteria, right, that they can further divide them into two groups. One that is extremophiles. That means they love to live in very extreme condition, like very high temperature, very acidic pH. Okay. So these organisms seems, even though they are bacteria, they seems to have got more features similar to eukaryote than the bacteria. And because they are so different already, so scientists decided to further increase a taxon to put them in. That means further divide prokaryotes and eukaryotes into Archaea, Bacteria, Archaea, Bacteria, and Eukarya. Okay. You need to remember these three names because it's in the syllabus. So these three names are the domain name, and they are all starting with capital letter, no underline because not species name. Only species name got underline. This one no need underline. You can see it's not italicized. So Archaea, Bacteria, and Eukarya are the name of three domains. Okay, what are these three? Bacteria is the domain that contains all the prokaryotic organisms except those bacteria that are classified into Archaea. Archaea means beginning. That means it seems that they are very primitive bacteria because we read that Earth, right? When Earth is formed, it's very hot and the condition is not conducive for living. But if those bacteria are able to live there, so they say Archaea means beginning. They are able to live. Okay. So it's the domain of prokaryotic organisms that resemble bacteria. So they really like bacteria, but they share some features with eukaryotes. Later you'll see what are the features. Eukarya is the name of the domain that contains all the eukaryotic organisms, which are the Protoctista, fungi, plants, and animals. So this is evolutionary tree to relate between these three domains. Now, since Archaea has got features that more closely resemble Eukarya than bacteria, more closely related, that means to say that they have got more recent ancestor, isn't it? They got more recent common ancestor. And then Archaea bacteria is more different from bacteria, so their common ancestor is more not so recent. Okay, is further away. So therefore, Archaea and bacteria diverge earlier in the history of evolution. Eukarya and Archaea diverge later in the history of evolution. Okay, because these two are more similar, that means that common ancestor is actually more recent than these two. Okay, and because of that, we know this one diverged later and this one diverged earlier in the history of evolution. So Eukarya are all the eukaryotes. Archaea and bacteria were both made up all the prokaryotes. So this is called the evolutionary tree, another name called phylogenetic tree of life. So because Archaea appear to have more in common with Eukarya, so both of them, see Archaea and Eukarya, both of them got more common recent ancestor than between Archaea and bacteria. So this one shows you the evolutionary tree or the evolutionary history. Okay, Archaea and Eukarya diverge later, and then bacteria and Archaea diverge earlier in the evolution of life. Do you know what's diverge? You know, right? They will separate in their evolution, maybe due to what are two types of speciation you have learned? Allopatric speciation and sympatric speciation, right? That can cause them to be different. Okay. So this table shows the similarity and differences between prokaryote, eukaryote, bacteria, Archaea, and Eukarya. Okay. So you can see that bacteria, Archaea are 70S ribosome, Eukarya 80S ribosome. Cell wall are very interesting. Cell wall, bacteria cell wall is peptidoglycan, right? But this Archaea cell wall is not made up of peptidoglycan. Okay, it's not made up of peptidoglycan, but it contains other components other than peptidoglycan. Eukarya depends. If it's plant, it's cellulose. If it's fungi, it's made up of chitin, cell wall. Okay, histone protein, interesting. You see, bacteria got no histone protein, right? But then Archaea got histone protein. So these are very similar to eukaryote. Okay. What else? Nucleus, all normal, everything normal. Cell division, binary fission for both the bacteria. Okay. For Eukarya, because there's nucleus, there's mitosis and meiosis. Please write down that it can be sexual or asexual reproduction for eukaryotes. Under mitosis and meiosis, you can write there asexual or sexual reproduction, because asexual is usually mitosis, meiosis is sexual reproduction. Then a lot of Archaea are extremophiles. That means they love extreme environmental condition. I'll show you after what is that. Phile means loving. The cell, okay, bacteria is a single cell organism, or sometimes they can exist as small group like a chain like that. A chain of bacteria joined together. Okay. Archaea also same. Whereas for eukaryote, it can be unicellular like the prokaryotes. No, sorry, not prokaryotes. Protoctista. Okay, like paramecium, amoeba. So they are single cell or unicellular organism. It can be colonial, means they can live together as a group. They can be multicellular, means multicellular organism like us. Right, cells arranged tissue, organ system. So example of Archaea, which are extremophiles. So they are bacteria that live inside the gut of animals, and then they can produce methane. So we call them methanogen. Okay, methanogens. Thermophiles love very hot environment. They can live in very hot environment like hot spring, okay, volcanic vent. And then they can live in the thick mud of swamps, which there is practically very low oxygen level, but they can still survive and carry out anaerobic respiration. Then they can live halophile. Halo means salt loving. So they can live in area where it's very high concentration of salt, yet they can survive. Like the Owen salt lake, that means the lake is very, very salty one, okay, but can still survive. So these are the examples of Archaea, the extremophiles. This is another example. Nostoc, you're familiar with nostoc, right? Nitrogen fixation. Nostoc. Cyanobacterium. Okay, so this one you can see, these are each of the sphere is a nostoc bacteria. And you can see that they actually arrange into group of chains, right? Okay, so this bacteria can fix CO2 in photosynthesis. That means it can photosynthesize, that's why it's green color. And then it can also fix nitrogen into ammonia in the lighter green cells in the phylum. So these are the lighter green cells, the bigger one, the lighter color one. So the lighter color one can fix nitrogen and convert it into NH3 and make it available to the plant. Because plant cannot absorb the nitrogen from the air and straight away use it to make amino acid. So they have to absorb in a soluble form in the soil. So this bacteria is able to do that. They trap the nitrogen from the air and then they convert it to NH3, and it dissolve in water, becomes NH4, and then it is absorbed by the plant and use it to make amino acids. Okay, so it's very important bacteria. This is Pyrococcus furiosus. It's very interesting, this structure here. So this bacteria is a hyperthermophilic. That means it's not only thermophilic, but hyper. How hyper is hyper? Can live in boiling water. They survive in boiling water. My goodness. So 70 to 133 degrees Celsius, they can survive. But then when the temperature goes below 70, they will freeze and die. So strange, right? Below 70, they freeze and dry and die. Very strange. Okay. Yeah. So because they can live in very, very hot temperature, even boiling, right? So they can be found in the deep sea vents and volcanic marine muds. That means in the seabed, right? Below there is the volcano. It's very, very hot. So they're able to live in those areas. Okay. So very interesting. And usually deep sea means no oxygen one. So they are anaerobic. So if there's no oxygen, what will be used as the electron acceptor? Because we know that in respiration, we need the proton and electron acceptor, isn't it? To regenerate the NAD+, right? So therefore, they use sulfur instead of oxygen. So very interesting. So this is Archaea. Okay, so this table is just a recap of what are prokaryotes and what are eukaryotes, their features. This is from AS. So I leave it to you to read at your own time. Okay, this is just to put there so you can revise easily. Okay. So the next learning outcome is outline the characteristic features of the kingdom Protoctista, Fungi, Plantae, Animalia. So this is very easy. We revise again. Okay, the classification of this organism. So this is evolution of 5 or 6 kingdom. Why 5? Because last time it's 5. Now 6 because they've added the domain in, they've divided the bacteria into 2 types. So instead of prokaryote as a kingdom, now it becomes Eukarya and Archaea bacteria. Okay. So the 2 kingdoms. So this diagram shows the evolution of the 5 kingdoms, starting from prokaryotes, which is a unicellular simple organism. Then after some time, they become eukaryotes. So prokaryotes becomes eukaryotes. It's still unicellular, but there's nucleus, there's compartmentalization into different organelles, so they can function better. So this is called Protoctista. Okay. Then after that, further evolution will lead to formation of fungi, Plantae and Animalia, where the cells are arranged in more complicated manner into tissue, organ, and system. Okay. So the 5 kingdoms are the Eukarya, Archaea, Bacteria, Protoctista, Fungi, Plantae, Animalia. So for Eukarya, Eukarya has got 4 kingdoms. Okay. Archaea domain and Bacteria domain, each of them is 1 kingdom. Okay, the kingdom name and domain name is different. Okay. Archaea is the domain name, kingdom name is Archaea Bacteria. Okay. Bacteria is domain name, the kingdom name is Eukarya. Eu means well-developed bacteria. Archaea is primitive. So what you can see in the evolution of 5 kingdoms or 6 kingdoms is we first started with unicellular organism. It's very simple. After evolution, it becomes multicellular organism. It's complex, specialized in structures and functions for the division of labor. Have you heard of division of labor? It means initially in a cell, every part of the cell must do something, but now you divide the cell into nucleus, rough ER, smooth ER, Golgi apparatus. So different compartment ribosomes will do different things. So it is called specialization and division of labor. So that's more efficient because structure is specialized to carry out functions more efficient. Okay. So these are just a diagram to show the 5 kingdoms. And I like this one very much because it gives you more detail. The evolution of the 5 kingdoms, starting from prokaryote, right? And then the Protoctista, and the Plantae, Fungi, and Animalia. And we have got even more names inside there. Each of them is a taxon. Okay. So syllabus says we need to be able to describe the features of the organism in these 4 kingdoms of domain Eukarya. So what are the features that you can use to describe them? Whether the organism in the kingdom is single or multicellular? Do the cells arrange into tissues? Are the cells motile, means can the cells move? Is it prokaryotic or eukaryotic cells? If cell wall is present, what is the composition of cell wall? Is it autotrophic or heterotrophic? Example of organism and size of organism. Do you know the meaning of autotrophic and heterotrophic? Okay, what is autotrophic? Myra? So auto means self, trophic means to eat. So the organism is able to produce their own organic substances. Okay, their own organic compound, they can produce it by themselves. Like for example, they take CO2 and they convert into CHO. Okay, so it's autotrophic. Heterotrophic, hetero means other way of feeding. Trophic means feeding, other than autotrophs. So they cannot produce their own organic constituents. They have to obtain organic substances from external environment in order to use them to produce their own organic constituent like us. Right? We have to take in the food, and from the food we take the carbohydrate out, we take the protein out, right? We take the lipids out and use them to make our proteins and so on. So we are heterotrophs. Okay. Okay. So this is a table that actually describes the features of these 4 kingdoms. So you can go through them. They are very, very, very good because this is given by the Cambridge one. It's given by the Cambridge, this table. Okay, so you can go through them. So Protoctista, I'll go through 4 of them with you very quickly. You have time? Yes. So Protoctista is simple, mostly unicellular, and a few of them are colonial and multicellular. Eukaryotic organisms that do not fall easily into either fungi, Plantae, Animalia. So they are all basically unicellular. And some of them can photosynthesize, some of them cannot photosynthesize, right? Like, what is it? Amoeba cannot photosynthesize, correct? Okay. So generally regarded as the ancestor of modern fungi, plants, and animals, cells are not differentiated in tissue because they are a single unicellular organism. So they don't arrange into tissue. Some are autotrophic, which can photosynthesize. Some are heterotrophic, they have to phagocytose substances. Some have cell wall because they're plant-like. Some don't, some don't because they're animal-like. Okay, like protozoa is animal-like, algae is plant-like, slime molds. So all are unicellular. Fungi, okay, all these are all different kind of fungi. Fungi kingdom, they are heterotrophic. That means in order to produce the organic substances, they have to obtain organic substances from outside. So basically, they secrete enzymes out and then they digest the food from dead organic matter and then they absorb it into the body. Non-motile means they cannot move. Okay, non-photosynthetic, mostly multicellular eukaryotes absorb nutrients from dead or living organism. Let's say if they live on our skin, right, we're a living organism, right, and they can absorb the nutrients from us as well. Okay, that's why it causes the skin to rot. When fungus grow on your skin can rot because of that. Okay, they secrete enzymes. So they are not differentiated into tissue, cell walls made of chitin. Example, yeast molds and mushrooms. So yeast molds is the one that grow on the bread after you leave it for some time, and mushrooms. Plantae is the name of the kingdom plant. Plantae are autotrophic. They are photosynthetic. They cannot move, non-motile, except for male gametes in mosses and ferns. So mosses and ferns, the male gametes can swim in the water. Okay, yeah, they can swim in the water. Multicellular, so plants are multicellular eukaryotes. Cell walls made of cellulose, so these are examples. Animalia, heterotrophic, multicellular eukaryotes without cell wall, non-photosynthetic, motile, so they can move. They ingest the food into their body and digest it inside the body, and egestion of undigested and indigested food. What is the difference between undigested and indigested? What is indigestion? Cannot digest, right? Undigested means your body can, undigested means your body can digest, but then it did not digest it yet. Undigested, you have not digested yet. Okay? Indigested means your body cannot digest it, like cellulose, indigestible. Okay, so there's a difference between undigested and indigested. Cells differentiate into tissues. Yes, you've learned a lot of tissues like epithelium, right? Endothelium. Okay. Muscle is tissue, right? Muscles. Okay. Blood is also tissue, made up of red blood cell, white blood cells, blood plasma. Example, worms, arthropods, chordates. Anyone interested in learning about those classification of animals? Some of you will be, right? Because the way they name the organism is very interesting. Because you can see the meaning of what is arthro, what is pod, what is chordates. Then you can, the moment you learn this word, you know that you can see the organism and straight away you know this organism belongs to chordates. This organism belongs to arthropods. Very interesting. Okay. So, putting everything into a table, what are the main characteristics of the four organisms? All of them are under Eukarya domain. So all of them are eukaryotic organisms. Protoctista is usually single cell. Fungi is single cell or multicellular. Single cell, for example, yeast. Yeast is single cell. Whereas the rest of them usually like mushroom, okay, the molds are all multicellular. Plantae, multicellular, animal cellular. May contain cell wall or not. Fungi, chitin. Plantae, cellulose. Animal don't have. Nucleus, all got because eukaryotes. Membrane bound organisms, all got because eukaryotes. Autotrophic or heterotrophic. Fungi is heterotrophic. They have to secrete enzymes to digest food outside their body. Then they absorb the digested food, right? Whereas for Animalia, we consume the food into the body and we digest it inside the body, right? Plantae, they are autotrophic. They synthesize their own organic compound from inorganic compound in the environment. Some may be flagellated. Fungi, no flagella. Some plant cells may be flagellated. Some animal cells may be flagellated, got flagella. Okay. Okay, lastly, we're going to look at what? Virus. Virus, outline how viruses are classified, limited to the type of nucleic acid, whether it's carrying RNA or DNA, and whether this RNA and DNA is single-stranded or double-stranded. So this is how we classify virus. Okay. So virus is an infectious agent because it's supposed to infect a whole cell and convert into viral production factory. So it's infectious. But it's not considered as a living organism. So all of us know already, okay? Because it doesn't have the cellular structure, it doesn't have metabolism. And because virus is so tiny, we can only see them using electron microscope. So it's many times smaller than the bacteria, eukaryotes and prokaryotes and eukaryotes. And it is made up of a protein coat surrounding the nucleic acid material and a few types of enzyme, for example, reverse transcriptase. The nucleic acid material can be DNA, RNA, and both types of nucleic acid can be single or double-stranded. So it's either DNA or RNA only they carry, and it's single or double-stranded. It doesn't have its own metabolism. It doesn't carry out any metabolism inside it. So it needs to go and infect another whole cell and hijack it, hijack the entire cell. So hijack the machinery of the cell. That means hijack all the organelles, hijack all the enzymes of the cell, okay? And convert it to viral production factory. Okay, in order to make viral nucleic acid, viral protein, viral enzymes to make new viruses. So how do we classify virus? Usually it's based on the disease which they cause, the type of nucleic acid they contain, and whether nucleic acid is single-stranded or double-stranded. So for example here, these are some examples. Okay, so we have got virus with one strand of DNA, two strands of DNA, one strand of RNA, two strands of RNA. And then these are example of the virus name, okay, and the host cell where it will infect in order to multiply the virus, and the disease that it will cause. I think the one that you want to memorize is the last one, is easiest one. The last one you learned before, right? Human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. Okay, so HIV carries two strands of RNA. It infects human, it causes HIV/AIDS. Okay, so this one you memorize, the rest no need to memorize. So that's all for today's lesson. So you have learned, discuss the meaning of the term species, limited to biological species concept, morphological species concept, and ecological species concept. Describe the classification of organisms in the three domains, Archaea, Bacteria, Eukarya. State that Archaea and Bacteria are prokaryotes and that there are differences between them, limited to differences in the membrane, lipids, ribosomal RNA, and composition of cell wall. Describe the classification of organisms in the Eukarya domain into the taxonomic hierarchy of kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Outline the characteristic features of kingdoms, Protoctista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. And lastly, outline how viruses are classified, limited to the type of nucleic acid, RNA, or DNA, and whether they're single-stranded or double-stranded. Okay, so that's all for today. Okay.